What is up, everybody? Coming at you today with my top 10 tips to catch more summer catfish. Now, number one is the spawn. Most catfish are going to spawn sometime from early May to the end of July. Just kind of depends on where you are in the country. Typically where I'm at here in Texas, it'll start in about early to mid-May, and typically the fish are all done by mid-July-ish or so, a little bit later. But the tip for the spawn is, number one, channel catfish are the easiest catfish to catch when they're spawning. Hands down, blue catfish and flathead catfish can be tough to catch during the spawn, but channel catfish are the easiest fish to catch while the spawn is going on. So that's a great time to target channel catfish when the other fishing may be tough. The other thing you need to keep in mind about the spawn is that not all fish spawn at the same time. Some are going to spawn early, some will spawn late, and some may not spawn at all. I feel like this is a drinking game. Every time I say spawn, take a drink. Number two is to leverage the heat. Now, where I'm at here in Texas, it can be really hot. It's not uncommon for it to be 110 degrees during the day, and water temperatures can be up in the low to mid 90s at times. But you can use that heat to your advantage when you're targeting catfish. Fish the areas where you can leverage that heat. Target cover, target structure, and target areas that are going to be highly oxygenated. Now, there's all sorts of variables into that, but when a fish can find shade, cooler water, or more oxygenated water, they're going to flock to those areas and you'll catch more fish. Number three, kind of similar to number two, but a little bit different, is fish cover. Docks, rocks, trees, timber, brush piles, vegetation, anything that's going to create some cover for those catfish to get up into is a great place to target catfish, especially during the heat of the day in the summer. Now, the other part of that is when you get into vegetation. You've got cattails, you've got lily pads, willow trees, all sorts of other aquatic vegetation. And that vegetation puts off oxygen. And that water will typically be more highly oxygenated. So fishing vegetation is not only about cover and providing some shade, but it's also about areas with more oxygen in the water. Now, in addition to all that, anytime you've got lots of vegetation sticking up out of the water, there's going to be all sorts of stuff in there. Grasshoppers, bugs, crickets, mayflies, you name it. And those are all things that every species of catfish will eat, especially with the right opportunity. Number four is to punch the channel catfish. You may have seen some of my other videos. I'll put links down below this so you can check them out. But I'm a big fan of fishing for channel catfish in the summer, especially during the spawn, especially during the heat of the summer where I'm at here in Texas. They are the most consistent catfish that we can fish for here where I live, and we can get in, get on the water, catch fish really quickly, and get out before it gets too hot. And punch bait will catch those fish every time. This is just an old stink bait or prepared bait, whatever you want to call it. It's real thick and it sticks to a bare treble hook. You just push the hook down in there, pull it out, cast it out there. You can fish that punch bait underneath a bobber. You can fish it straight down below the boat. In deeper water, there's all sorts of different options, but it is a deadly way to catch channel catfish in the summertime. Number five is to chum them up. It doesn't matter if you're fishing for channel catfish or blue catfish. In the summertime, the fish can be scattered. When you have warm water and thermoclines, the fish will generally spread out and they'll be in lots of different areas. Now, you can find concentrations of fish, but as a general rule, the fish are usually more scattered in the summer, at least in the southern states, than they are any other time of the year. So taking some sort of chum, soured wheat, range cubes, even cut up shad, and throwing that out into the water can help to concentrate those fish and get them feeding in or under or around your boat. Probably not going to be feeding in your boat, but I don't want to go back and do another clip of this. So, hey, what are you going to do? Under or around the boat. Throw some of that stuff out there, just enough to get some scent in the water, get those fish moving around and feeding, and it will help you catch more fish. Number 6 is the thermocline I've mentioned a couple of times. Now, when water temperatures rise and it gets really warm, in lakes and reservoirs where you don't have any current or moving water, you're going to have a layer of water down at the bottom that develops that has very little oxygen in it. Basically, it just gets down there and all the stuff on the bottom starts to decay and it sucks all the oxygen out of that water. I've got a video that talks much more about thermocline, how to find it, what it is. I'll put a link down below to that so you can check that out. But when a thermocline develops in lakes and reservoirs, fish can go down below that thermocline and feed, but they can't stay there very long because of the lack of oxygen. So that's what I like to call the dead zone. You can target fish down there, but it can be tough fishing. So generally, thermocline is going to be somewhere between 21 and about 23 feet in every lake and reservoir. You go out there, you can find it on your graph. If you don't have a fish finder or you're fishing from the bank, then just kind of trust that if there's no current and it's hot, you're probably going to have a thermocline unless you're way, way, way up north and it just doesn't get that hot. So when you're fishing in the heat of the summer on lakes and reservoirs that have a thermocline, you want to stay in water depths that are less than that thermocline. So you want to stay shallower than 21, 22, 23 feet, or you want to generally stay above that thermocline and target those fish that are suspending over that water that doesn't have that oxygen in it. Again, you can catch fish down below it, but it's tough. So generally you're going to stay shallower than the thermocline or above the thermocline, and you'll catch more catfish by doing that. Number 7 is to get the blues. Now in the southern states and reservoirs and lakes that don't have that current and that develop those thermoclines and where the water temperature has tendency to get really, really hot, it can leave a lot of anglers scratching their head when it comes to catching blue catfish. But there are some things that you can do to up your odds of success. As a general rule, the blue catfish are going to move often and quickly in really hot water during those warmer months, and really hot water and during those warmer months. So typically, even if you go out and find fish one day and you just whack them and stack them, you can't rely on them being there again later on or the next day. The pattern can vary so much in the heat, it can be a little bit frustrating. So usually what I've found is that the best thing to do in that heat to catch blue catfish is to drift. Cover water and drift. Find those areas where you see concentrations or scattered fish and drift through them and cover a lot of water. You'll usually catch more fish and bigger blue catfish doing that than just trying to sit on them and wait them out because they move so fast. Number 8 is to watch for the magic depth. Now, any time of year, you're typically going to have a magic depth. That's what I call that area where you find the vast majority of the biology. That means where you locate the shad, the plankton, the majority of the active feeding fish. If you get out there and you drive around, you look on that fish finder, there's going to be certain depths or one depth where it's going to seem like the vast majority of the fish are holding. So it's a good idea to go out and spend some time finding that magic depth in the heat of the summer. Turn that graph on, do some driving, drive in those depths that are below the thermocline if you're fishing a lake or reservoir that has a thermocline, and then look for areas where structure crosses into that thermocline. So deeper water with structure that comes up. Ridges, points, humps, drop-offs, anything like that at all. Spend some time driving around, watch that graph, and look for that magic depth where you start seeing tons of fish, tons of bait fish, and all that biology. And that's the magic depth and usually the most productive place to catch fish. Number 9 is the night fishing advantage. Now, a lot of times anglers have this perception that they need to fish at night to catch catfish, and it couldn't be further from the truth. I can catch just as many, if not more, catfish during the day that I can at night, or that anyone else can at night. It's an old wives' tale, and it's not true. But during the summer, when it's hot, it can be an advantage, and it's certainly more comfortable for the angler to fish at night and avoid the heat or beat that heat. But the other part of that is that catfish are very, very predictable at night. They have patterns that they'll follow, and they'll pretty much stick to those patterns. So if you're going to target fish at night, whether it be blues, channels, or flatheads, the blues and channels are pretty predictable, especially blue catfish, because they'll follow the bait fish. I like to look in shallow areas with deeper water nearby and on and around structure. So anywhere there's deep water leading into shallow water, you've got points, humps, drop-offs, ledges, anything like that where those bait fish will move up at night to get into that shallower water and feed, and the fish will come behind them and follow. And those are great areas to target blue catfish and channel catfish if you're gonna fish at night. Now, number 10 is to bobber fish. Now, I'm not talking about those little red and white plastic kitty bobbers that you see in Walmart. I'm talking about slip bobbers. Slip bobbers are a very effective way to fish in the summertime. They're a great option other times of the year as well, but I use slip bobbers a lot during the summer. It's a great way to target channel catfish, whether you're fishing deep or shallow. Also a great way to fish for blue catfish. You can suspend baits over that thermocline and over structure, and even in those mid depths shallower than that thermocline, with big slip bobbers, and fish all sorts of different ways. Sometimes in the summer you need to get those baits quite a ways up off the bottom. It's not uncommon in hot water, even in 20 or 30 or 40 feet, to find fish 10 foot below the surface. So you got to watch that graph and get those baits in front of the fish, and slip bobbers are a great way to do that. So those are my top 10 tips for catching more catfish and bigger catfish this summer. I did a video just like this in the spring and got a ton of great feedback on it, and had a lot of requests to do this same kind of video for every season. I'm gonna do that now that we've got spring and summer covered. I'll be back, and I'll do a fall and a winter one as well. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that bell notification so you will know whenever I post future videos like this. That light back there is really messing me up. So make sure you hit that thumbs up button. Go down below, leave me a comment if you got questions, and I will be back next week. Till next time, I'm Chad Ferguson, catfishedge.com.